Hello, dear ones. Donetta here from An Uncommon Life. I have today a topic in mind of covering stringing materials. I want to discuss materials. It's a topic that is not often discussed. We often hear about technique. Many of you are so skilled in technique. I want to discuss materials because that's my wheelhouse. Materials and ergonomics. Welcome. Let's have a talk about stringing materials. Recently, I organized my stringing materials and made a little better work of it. This is a pegboard that is kept beside me at my left hand. At my right hand, I keep needles and cutting materials because I'm right-handed. If you are left-handed, set your studio up just the opposite. But for me, I reach up and grab my threads, and then I have my needle here and I thread my product. Okay, thread my needles. First off, I want to cover some of the basic threads. There are many different techniques with beading. In my little dish here, I have a variety of silk thread. When you're doing one needle or two needle embroidery beadwork, nowadays we use Fireline more than anything, but I want to introduce you into the old school. Old school, before Fireline, we had silk threads. Threads are designed by size. That matters because we want to take into consideration the size of the hole in the bead in which you'll be making your pass through. Many of the very finest beads need a much finer thread. Silk threads come in a variety of sizes. There's double aught, which is your finest. It goes up to aught. These are terms that you'll become familiar with if you use silk thread. Nowadays, like I said, we've all become so accustomed to Fireline, but there may be a day when Fireline isn't accessible to us, or when perhaps a silk thread would be a better fit. Why does thread matter, and the type and the material? Like materials want like materials. If you're doing handwork, fine embroideries on silk, you definitely would want to use silk thread, not Fireline. I am not going to be covering all of the different kinds of threads that there are, but what I have, I'll go over and try to share with you what purpose that material holds in my wheelhouse. Now, working with pearls, pearls need to be knotted. And this thread here is silk thread. It comes in different sizes. This size on this one is triple F. For example, this size on this one is, well, it's calling it 9.1. This doesn't have a size listed on it. This one here, it's a number 2. So threads, silk threads will come depending on the manufacturer in 1, 2, 3, I think 4 is the larger. This is double F, and please don't quote me on this, but I think the scale on silk thread, like triple F, would be near a size 4. But don't quote me on that. I'm not positive exactly on the exchange. You might be able to see This thread is much smaller. It's a number 3. But I want to show you about this. When you buy silk thread, let me set this down. When you buy silk thread, it comes on a card, and many times it comes, I'm not quite sure if I'm going to be able to do this for you, but I don't know if you can see this, but there's a wire, a twisted wire needle that is a part of the thread. It comes on the cards. Silk thread is most often used for knotting. That's when you strand, say for example, pearls or beads that are a relatively expensive bead. You don't want that strand to break and scatter on the floor, right? So you knot in between each bead, and that's a skill. I'm not going to be covering techniques and those skills right now, just materials. But if you have questions, be sure to feel free to ask me in comments. Now, going from those silk threads, we'll come up to Fireline. Fireline was originally a fishing line that was monofilament. Monofilament, mono being singular, filament. These threads right here are all monofilament. Now, monofilament is a synthetic material. Materials like materials. So if you were stitching on a nylon or on a heavier, non-stretching kind of material, monofilament's your best friend. It's nice. This here is a heavier type of a monofilament. It is not what it says on here. This is something that I use my old spools. I recycle. Recycle and repurpose. I'll show you that stuff. Now, you see I have a lot of different fire lines because the size of your line depends upon many factors why it would be called in. I keep fire line 1 pound, 2 pound, 3 pound, 4 pound. I also have some 8 pound and some 10 pound. These here are tools that I mostly use in 2-needle embroidery. That's often where you see where the top of moccasins or that kind of thing. This here is called Nymo. Nymo this is a 4 pound Nymo. Now I have 4 pound Fireline. Actually, this is a 6 pound, I think, monofilament. Monofilament is different than Fireline, but similar in its application. If you want to get a workhorse and you only want to buy one kind of line because you're just learning how to bead, this would be your investment. Honestly, it's an investment. I don't know what they're going for now. I'm guesstimating around $30 or $40 a spool. This is my workhorse. You'll see many a lovely beater on here bemoaning the day their cat gets to the spool of this thread. And I've seen it happen many a time. I don't have one on it right now, but in my sewing room, the serger threads that I use, they kind of look like they come on these type of spools. Serger thread, they have a net that can go over the top of this, and many of you can speak to the wonderful creative ways in which you have protected your spools. And you can add those to the comments if you like. That might help some other beaters from kitty cats that like to destroy things. So these are our threads that we use in embroidery work or in peyote stitch or in many of the stitches like brick stitch. I'm not going to be getting into the technique of doing that. I'm just discussing materials. when you wonder, what do I buy when I'm just getting into beading? And I answer you, it depends what you're going to bead. I'm trying to answer that question. It depends what you're going to bead. So I'm telling you about materials so you can think about it. I run 11/aught seed bead mainly. But if I'm going to use my 18s or the 15s or 13 cuts, I kind of like to use 1 pound if I need more than one pass through. 11/aught, I will use 4 to hold the bead. If I'm doing a 2-strand embroidery, I will use 4 pound to thread my beads on, lay that thread down, and then stitch up back and forth with a 2 pound. I like 2 pound because the thread in between each bead doesn't show as much. If you use anything more than 4 pound on a size odd 11 bead, you're going to see that thread. Coming down from your fire line for your seed beads and such, we come down. I am not only a seed bead artist, I work with all kinds of beads from all kinds of cultures. Different types of beads have different hole size. They have different weight, and their materials like materials. All right, so when you're working with leather, this is called artificial sinew. Now, real sinew was made from the gut and from muscle fibers so that nothing went to waste. This is artificial sinew. Real sinew is something that you have to chew. The elders made their own sinew, and many had worn teeth from such things. But this is waxed artificial sinew. Its best purpose is for stitching leather together. Like materials want like materials. I keep saying it over and over because that is the thing that will help you to know what to choose to use. This is some other cording, very, very fine cording. Now, this cording has a diameter that would work very well with anything that might have a 2mm hole or larger. A tool that is very important to have in your arsenal to be able to make good decisions about which materials. I got the fire line unraveling on me here. Oh, by the way, the fire line comes in black, white, smoke, some different colors. Instead of black, I really like smoke. It becomes much more invisible than the black does. So this tool, this is called a caliper. A caliper can measure, on this side, it can measure outer width. The other end of the caliper is used to measure a hole, okay? Or an opening. You can zero your caliper out, and we'll do some videos on tools later. This will fit a 0.5 millimeter hole. However, when I thread this through a bead, I'm going to be threading this through where there's 2 thicknesses, right, that has to go through. Say this is, once you thread your needle, right, you're going to have 2 thicknesses of this, right? Your needle's here going through your bead. So when you decide what diameter thread, you've got to take into consideration, if I can get that to lay side by side, you need at least 0.88 mil. That's not real accurate because I'm balancing everything here. But you need to double, you need to take into consideration doubling.